That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The British Constitution provides that taxation and representation shall go together. Therefore, women taxpayers are entitled to vote.
I have a dream today. Let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
Well, hello and welcome back. I think this is episode 43 of Only Human. And this is a podcast where we, as most of the longtime listeners know, try to take that only human on as a oxymoron, reminding people that we're capable of many, many great things. And most importantly, we can grow where we are with the resources at hand. So today we are honored to have a really special guest, a friend of mine. We crossed paths, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, Adrienne Somerville. Adrienne, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kern. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Excited to be here.
And by way of introduction, Adrienne is a best-selling Amazon author, and I'm going to be reading this a little bit, so if my eyes go down, for those of you that are actually watching this, you caught me. She's a leading expert on a lot of things: business, information technology, talent management, and she is recognized globally for these things. Organizations pull her in. She speaks to a lot of different groups. We'll let her talk a little bit about that. Her debut book was called Wingspan: Talent Management Gaining Corporate Dominance. And in that book, she talked about how to assist companies and organizations of all sizes across all markets, how to understand and manage their portfolio of talent. More recently, and maybe more to the point of our podcast today, her second book came out. It's called Mastering Mentoring to Your Vantage Point. So Adrienne and I are going to have a little discussion today about talent management, including our own, about how we influence other people, how other people influence ourselves, and hopefully roll it all into this idea that we can grow in a lot of different ways that we didn't know about. So Adrienne, let me start out with a question about talent management. We'll get to mentoring here in a moment, but it seems to me, we work with a lot of different organizations just like you do, that it's always been important, right, to manage the talent you got, but now maybe even more so with all the generational handoffs that are going on. You know, I work a lot in aviation, and I mean, we're seeing a generational handoff unlike any that's ever occurred in the history, 100-year history of aviation. So do you see it the same way, or am I wrong about that?
You know, I think what's so amazing about talent management is for years, it's always been products, right? We continue to talk about products, product delivery, product turnaround, how fast we can get products out the door. And the shift with talent management is all of that is equally as important. We will get those products out the door, but instead of talking about the quantity of things, right, we're talking about the quality of people and the portfolio of people in terms of their talent and their skills, and that there's so much more than a commodity, right? That it's really about driving production and product delivery and optimal performance, but talent management focuses on the people side of the house and not necessarily said product and delivery. So I like to think about it in terms of people are that's the human engine. That's the humanistic side of the business that sometimes we don't really get a chance to discuss when we focus certainly on data and production and productivity.
Yeah, and you know, I won't call out any big companies by name, but we've certainly seen some big companies have some spectacular quality failures over the past few months and even years. And I suspect that if you went up their hierarchy and looked at their corporate leadership, I'm sure they have an HR department, but I'm sure at the very senior levels, those people got there by focusing on product and profit and on shareholder results. And it seems to me, at least, that you could throw this out there speculatively, that they may have lost track of the talent. And I'll give you an example and let you kind of comment on it. When I was in the Air Force, I worked in Wichita, Kansas, and for a couple of years, or not a couple of years, but a few months actually, between when I was flying KC-135 tankers and B-1 bombers, I was waiting to go to school. And so they sent me over to Boeing Military Aircraft Corporation, BMAC, in Wichita, where I did acceptance flights on re-engined KC-135s. It was a really fun job. You took an airplane up, you ran a bunch of tests, shut down engine, started it, came back and landed a couple hours later. And when you landed, literally, I was surrounded by professional mechanics and engineers that, it wasn't like, did it pass? It was like, did you hear anything funny? Did you see, did this light work? They were all about their jobs, right?
Right.
Now, fast forward 30, 40 years, that same group of workers in that same town working for Spirit Aerosystems, 2 times removed from Boeing, bought and sold, are having all of these quality problems where they're not installing bolts and they're not completing checklists. And Adrienne, I got to tell you, these people that I knew were the granddaughters and grandsons of the people that used to work for Clyde Cessna and Olive Ann Beach and all these people. This was as professional an aviation culture as I've ever seen. And yet somehow it had fallen by the wayside as other priorities may have advanced. So how do you see the link between talent management and culture?
I think it's that willingness to invest in your talent. It's the willingness to identify, first of all, the right training. Many organizations have training programs. And if you would ask, why am I taking these courses? Get to the why. Sometimes it's because that's what we've always done. These are the courses that we offer. These are the courses that make sense. Some of those skills may be obsolete, and those courses may not even be germane to the day-to-day. But see, this is what I love about talent management and how it differs from HR. Talent management drives the HR decisions. It's the data analytics that drives the do we hire, what we hire, when we hire. And the talent management piece is I have a work product to be delivered. It warrants a skill, right, that we've identified at a level of proficiency. And more importantly, what do I have? Do I have that in Dr. Kern? Do I have that in someone else? Could I redeploy my assets? Should I retrain? Oh, no, I need to fill. I need to hire someone from outside and come in. But it's that analytics that we don't often get a chance to do, right? Because we're so quick. We're down one. We got to fill it with someone else, but not necessarily. And that's what I love about talent management, because it gives me the inside perspective in terms of database decisions of I have a requirement. It warrants a skill at a certain level of proficiency. Do I have it organically? Can I build it? When do I need it? Or do I redeploy assets because there's work that's no longer needed and I have individuals that I can retrain? When I wrote that book, I'll tell you why. Because I knew going into COVID that we would have companies that will not return. They were going to die on the vine, and we would have skills that would be in our economy unused. So what do we do with those unused skill sets? What do we do in terms of having a workforce throughout America that we need to tap in and redeploy? And more importantly, how do we do that? So teaching companies that there is talent that you can bring in, that maybe a wide array of talent that you could redeploy, or you don't have to necessarily let people go. You can capitalize on that talent. And talent management is also important when you do recruit, that you're able to retain, because you show clear growth in terms of career development, and you show opportunities to level, like you said, level up within these organizations. And do you have a structure, a framework to do that? So that's critically important in terms of success. Companies that optimally perform, they get it. right? And regardless of how big or how small, because I get to talk to different companies and nonprofit companies, this is the secret sauce from going good to great in terms of maximizing your talent pool to deliver the products and yield the profit margins you so desire.
Adrienne, you know the most important point I got out of that is that you've completed 2 books since COVID, and I still haven't finished the one I started. So, just all kidding aside, I want to, and we're going to slowly work this into mentoring. But I wanted to ask a question: if we're looking at talent management, talent development, what about our own talent? What if the organization isn't mapping to us? What if we are one of those hundreds of thousands of people that were laid off during COVID and we haven't found our way back in? How? And this is a little bit of a question that I didn't prepare you for, and you might not be ready for, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway. What can we do as individuals with regard to talent management with ourselves?
I love this question because I just had this conversation today. So what I do, and I encourage people I mentor to do, I call it the lonely work, right? This is the get real with yourself work. I know there is a portfolio of talent that I bring. I know I have some skills that are redeployable, that can be leveraged. But I also know there are skills that I do not have. And that's why I call it the lonely work, because this is the work that you have to do. And so what I've always done is I would encourage people not to seek out positions per se, but let's seek out an opportunity that offers closure in terms of what your skill set desires are. So I know what I have, I know what I don't have, and I desire to have. And I know there are opportunities in organizations that will afford me growth in the skill set areas that I don't have. Now, you have to be honest with yourself, right? That's the lonely work that only you can do. That's the self-reflecting, that's the self-assessing. But when you come to that place of, I know I need to do better at this, I know I want to speak publicly with a higher degree of confidence, what positions allow me to speak in forums that will broaden my skill set? Those are the ones that you go after. And you sometimes have to create those opportunities. And if you're not in a position yet, look for opportunities where you can grow and develop yourself, because that's the idea. We don't want to be in the same place this time next year, right? We want to start growing. And how do we do that? I call it doing the lonely work.
I love that. I'm gonna steal it. I'll keep attributing it to you as long as I remember. The lonely work. And we talk a lot about self-assessment and honest, objective evaluations. And that kind of leads us into this discussion on your second book, which is mentoring, which is a term that kind of has always bothered me, right? It's bothered me not because of what it represents, but kind of the definition it's taken on. Mm-hmm. There's, for example, in Part 121 airlines right now, there's a regulatory requirement for a formal mentoring program. And so you must attach this person to that person and do these things. And that's never been how mentoring has been to me, right? I've never considered myself a mentor, but I'm always looking for another mentor, right? And I have many. I have mentors that are younger than I am. I have mentors that live on other continents. And I feel a connection to them and a trust, right? That I can reach out to them with my dumbest questions and my biggest vulnerabilities and say, hey, what do you think about this? So to me, it's always been an informal kind of thing, but I'm not the expert on it. You are. So tell me a little bit more about what a mentor really is.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I appreciate your perspective, because you're not alone in trying to gauge sometimes and understand why you have to have a mentor, be it formal or informal. And I'll talk about those. So I am, first of all, a benefactor and a believer of the power of mentorship. I wouldn't probably be having this conversation with you had it not been for amazing mentors. And I fully embrace the diversity of mentors. Like you said, there's some on other continents, maybe speak other languages, maybe live in different communities in different parts of the United States and throughout the world, wear uniforms to work, some do not, don't look like you, right? So all of that richness has added to my mentoring experience, and I fully tell people to capitalize on it. There are organizations with formal programs. I'm not, and I say this respectfully, I'm not the matchmaker kind of person when it comes to selecting a mentor. But this is what I tell people, particularly in this environment: watch people, right? Know the characteristics that you value and they model. And so what I've done is I've watched and I go, okay, so he has great respect, credibility when he comes into the room, great technical competence. You know, he speaks well. He seems like he's accessible to many people, so I could get on his calendar. Trustworthy by her. She's going to, you know, be someone that I can tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. There'll be no judgment, a safe space. And so I looked for people throughout my 30-year career that modeled those attributes and characteristics that I valued. And then I sought them out in an interview capacity because I don't know necessarily if this is going to work. So I want to interview you to see if what I deemed with my initial gleaming kind of into your life, something that would be a good fit for me. And then I tell them, I'm just here to interview you. I'm looking for a mentor. Many organizations are large and complex, very difficult to navigate. And so you seem to embody and echo the values that are important to me. And with that said, I'd like to consider you at the end, you know, my potential mentor, if you would agree. And so I go through this whole interview process. Then in formal organizations, I'll capture the relationship in the tool for metrics and reporting. But ideally, I tell people, you can pursue that path. Sometimes it works. You get the perfect match. Bing, 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 89%, 92%, we're a match. But sometimes you simply talk to people and see who values you embrace and who you think would be important. The other thing is I've often had a mentor in my technical area, and I've often had a mentor who is in the area in which I want to ultimately grow. So I think it's important to not just have one, but to have someone else. Many people have mentors spiritually. They have people in different aspects of their life, not just professionally, personally, to consult. I just think it's so important to have that resource in terms of someone that I can call. The beauty of mentoring is, what I love about it is the line of questioning and the advice, which is different from coaching. Because coaching, I'm going to walk you through some things and you're going to come to the conclusion. But with mentoring, I'm going to walk you through, and then I'm going to give you some scenarios and some things to ponder to help you ultimately make the decision. And I think sometimes we get stuck. And then today, this hybrid work environment, like sometimes people feel like going in a couple of days a week, I'm still on an island a bit of my own. And having someone that I can say, hey, what do you think? How would you handle a situation? That's rich. I can tell you some mentors talked me off the ledge with some of my career decisions, for which I still remain thankful. But I think it's so important to know that you have someone that you can grow and they can remove barriers and they can speak on your behalf and they can guide you. It's a game changer in terms of particularly growing, but retaining talent in the work environment.
You know, I think this idea of interviewing for a mentor is fascinating and brilliant. I think it takes some courage, right, to be able to do that. I mean, you've got to care enough about your own growth in your profession or in other parts of your life to want to grow. Right? But the idea of then taking charge of it, mm-hmm. as opposed to someone saying, follow this person around for a while until you learn how things are done around here. Well, they may or may not map to what you actually need. So I think that's brilliant. Let me talk about this, or let me ask you about the other direction. Do you ever see anybody and you say, man, I really need to reach down and try to see if I can mentor that person? How does it work in the other direction for you?
Oh, absolutely. I am blessed to have a number of mentees. I think it's the gift that keeps on giving in any organization because it's an opportunity to pour out what was poured into me. So I always look for individuals new coming into the organization, those that don't really understand mentoring or are kind of anti-mentoring, right? I tried it and I had a person, it didn't work out. I like to look for those people so that I can bring them in the fold and give them an opportunity to kind of experience a different type of mentoring with me in that capacity. I always tell people it has to be something that you're wanting to invest in, right? Because there's no greater investment than you can make in yourself. So the relationship can be what you want it to be. And so come prepared, and I talk about that in my book. Come prepared for that first encounter. Do the work, that lonely work, because sometimes if you flop in my chair and say, I'm just confused, you got to give me something to work with. So be prepared for that mentoring session. Do the homework on the person that you think might be a good person to select as a mentor. When I look for the mentees in the organization, I figure out kind of what they value, some of their hobbies, a way to break the ice with them because they're new, they're nervous, they're trying to figure out the mentoring thing, don't know who to trust exactly. Be that leader of trust. Emulate those characteristics that someone would want you to be their mentor because they see that you have credibility, you're confident, you're competent, you're courageous in many of these instances, and that, wow, I could trust what he or she says. And so I try to demonstrate the behavior that people would want to have me be considered valuable in terms of relying on my recommendations and their career growth. I think there's no greater way to move an organization forward than to invest in its most priceless and valuable resource, and that's the people that are behind all of that they're trying to deliver.
Yeah. How often do you approach somebody and they say, yeah, no? Not interested.
It's funny, that's never. Because, and I say that respectfully, I think it's because I'm such an advocate. So if they look at me, so success leaves clues. So they would say, okay, so mentoring, and look at many leaders and many organizations, and just like you shared yourself, you have mentors. So there's something to this mentoring thing, right? They're not sure how to navigate through it, how it works best for them, how it would fit into their life. But success does leave clues. So if everyone's buying it and drinking it and it seems to be doing well, as a result of that, they're typically interested. But some would say, like, I had someone that was never available. So then accessibility is something that you're looking for someone that will make time for you, that will, because most of the time the mentors are extremely busy, right? But those that love mentoring and those that benefit from it, we make the time, right? We may we may work on something late at night because I spent an hour flushing through a problem with someone. But it still it warms my soul to know that I helped someone in the organization and that I'm investing in people and I'm contributing. I'm contributing in many ways that will ultimately ensure that the organizations are successful.
Yeah, I go at it a little bit differently, and I don't know why, but I'm attracted to, that broken guy or gal that's out there that, frustrated, turn around the corner, you can tell they've got a little bit of an attitude challenge, but their potential is great, right? And maybe I'm attracted to that because that's who I was, right? Mm-hmm. And I had some great mentors that didn't say, hey, look, I'd like to mentor you. They just planted a seed. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Hey, Tony, I'm not kidding. If you ever want to chat about any of this stuff, I think you got a big future in this human factors stuff. Give me a call. Dr. Al Deal, John Nance, a few other people I could name and throw out there. It was a really soft offer, right? Mm-hmm. And one that I, of course, in my invulnerable ego jacket, thought, I never need anything from those little guys. But eventually, you do make that call, and then all of a sudden, not only do you establish a professional relationship, but you make a new friend. And to me, that's been the most valuable piece of it. And so that's kind of the method I use. I'll run into a student somewhere. I call them judgment junkies, right? They're out there and they'll always be standing in line after you come down off the stage that says, I've always wanted to ask you this one question, And so you talk as much as you can because there's 8 other people behind them. And then you give them a card and say, hey, I really mean it. I want you to email me in the next 24 hours so we continue this conversation. Right. I got to get to these other people, all this other stuff. So, I don't think many people turn away, but not everybody's ready when you are.
Right.
Speaking of, I
want to add to what you just said. There's so many types of mentoring too, right? So it's that peer-to-peer mentor. So it's that, so you could actually find a tribe of other people that are kind of at your level that are also just to bounce things off, and you can peer-to-peer, you can group mentor. There's speed mentoring, right? I just want someone to talk about a technical issue. I don't need you every day. It's that kind of mentor. So there's so many ways to receive mentoring. And so we don't always think it has to be this marriage for a year. You can be done and kind of divorce that mentor and move on to other mentors at different phases in your career.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Even right here, I'm a kind of a nouveau rancher. I've been down here for about 5 years. There's a lot of things I don't understand about horses, donkeys, chickens, wildlife, power equipment. And I've got a small group of people I've met through church and other places where if I've got a question, and my oldest son happens to live not too far away, and he's pretty good with machines, that I can pick up the thing. Used to be, hey, I'll fix this myself. And there'd be a bunch of parts laying on the garage floor, and I'd hear, what am I going to do? I have to go now. I have to go buy a new machine. I don't have to do that anymore because I've been able to make these relationships, that technical mentorship that you talked about, where I can say, hey, listen, I've got a horse that's rubbing his butt raw and a post down here. What do I do? And that's called sweet itch, and away we go. Why do people mentor? I enjoy it. You enjoy it. Obviously, a lot of people enjoy it. But in terms of what's in it for you?
Mm-hmm. I have academically and technically, I think, advanced in a number of areas. And when I think of a great way to give advice, I think it's important to others that are seeking it or struggling with it or trying to understand things in essence of saving time. Let me give you some advice of what has happened in the past, worked and didn't work, that you could use as a framework. I also appreciate offering a perspective, just a different perspective when it comes to different things. I think that's important. We have an opportunity through mentoring to improve the skills of helping people. That's powerful when you think of skills. Sometimes in this world, in this virtual world, I've been able to introduce people to other people. So network building, an opportunity to expose. I tell people exposure is so critical. That whole pie formula, that 10% performance, 20% your image, 70% is exposure. I cannot overemphasize how many, and think about this virtual environment, mentors have exposed me. And that's something that I offer. I've exposed people. You know what? I know someone. You probably have not met Dr. Kern, but let me make a quick connection and then bring you into that conversation. And these become long-lasting relationships, right? So this is a way, like you said, you can expand your network. You can grow. And I just think it's a great way to empower people, to encourage people, to help them advance technically. I think that's important. And the effects of it, the expertise that you're growing, I think it's just so long lasting. But I think it's that opportunity to even shift the paradigm of people so that they start thinking differently. That's rewarding as a mentor. That's a gift that keeps on giving. And it's enlightening to see the wisdom, the unimaginable, the possibilities when people start thinking outside of their paradigm And this is why the diversity of thought is so important, because I would not have thought about that. We grew up in different areas. We had different experiences, but that's a good point. And we sit in different positions in the same organization. I tell people, you want to win with a diverse mindset. And mentors offer you that on a day-to-day basis. Like, why wouldn't we want to capitalize on that? And as a mentor, it's profound to believe you made a decision that I opened your aperture to consider. And that's the legacy leadership that mentors offer. So yeah. I think it's humbling to be a mentor.
That's wonderful. I'll tell you one of mine. And, I write books and talk about excellence and continuing to climb the performance evolution ladder, practicing precision, picturing perfection. But you know what, Adrienne? Sometimes I get tired and I get sloppy and I drift back toward mediocre performance in my own life, all aspects of my life. And when I do that, I reach out not to a mentor, but to a protege. Mm-hmm. Because, and I call them proteges because the word mentee always reminds me of one of those aquatic mammals in Florida. Anyways, because having someone look up to you means you hold yourself to a higher standard. Mm-hmm. It keeps me, I don't want to say sharp, maybe motivated. Yeah. I never want to let down someone who might come to me for advice. And so I've always said the door to high performance opens outward. And I think mentorship is certainly one of the major ways that we can do that. And like you so eloquently pointed out, it doesn't have to be about your job. It can be spiritually. It can be your hobbies. It can be family relationships. It can be anything, right? Sports, all of those things. Well, we're kind of coming down the home stretch here of our normal 30-minute podcast, but I want to leave the last word to you. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. I've learned a lot here in the last 30 minutes, more than I did in 7.5 hours prepping for this. But I'll leave the last word to you on any topic that you want to address here to our audience. And it's a pretty good-sized audience these days.
Thank you. Thank you for that. This has been amazing. I love the chat. Like I said earlier, I'm a benefactor and I'm a believer in the power of mentorship. In my book, I give from the most introverted to the most wildly extroverted a plethora of tools for you to consider to get through that first, maybe awkward engagement to that long-lasting relationship that I referenced. And I tell people there's no greater advocate for your career than you. There's no greater investment than you can make in your career than you. And so why not capitalize on every tool to include the power of mentoring to do so? Frankly, no one gets to where they want to be alone. And that's just the reality of the world that we live in. And so those relationships that are formed, those powerful relationships through the power of mentorship, they're game changing. And so I think this is the now to change the game of where you are and more importantly, where you want to go.
That is such a fantastic summary. We have, usually on our podcast, we have things we hold. There's these posters we put up called Blue Threat Proverbs. And we just went through the last 14 of them on our last podcast. But one of them says, I can't remember the number, but it says, if it is to be, it is up to me. And, 10 words, 20 letters, one idea that'll change your life. And if we're too proud to reach out for a mentor or no one's shown us how, like you have done, we can really miss out on that. So once again, the book is, let me make sure I get it right, Mastering Mentoring to Your Vantage Point by Adrienne Somerville. Get out there, get on it. I'm sure it's on Amazon, right?
It is on Amazon, absolutely. Thank you.
Adrienne, there's so much more to talk about this and many other topics. I'd love to have you back on sometime. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us. To the rest of our audience out there, fighting for feedback like always. Let us know what chords we struck, what ones we missed, and what you might like to hear from us again in the future. Remember, grow where you are with the resources at hand, and we'll see you soon.